Hey, it's a close personal friend, Lou Brutus, and I am more than pleased to go to Peter Jackson's beautiful private island nation of New Zealand, a subsidiary of WIDA Incorporated, where I am joined by my close personal friends, Matt and Chris Brooks of Like a Storm. It is wonderful to see you there, and it looks like summertime, because it is.
Oh, how you doing, man? Good to see you. And yeah, we're very lucky to be in the middle of summer right now. There's actually a bunch of hobbits hiding behind the wall there.
Before we go any further, I think we need to clear up a rumor, really, and try and get to the bottom of it. But here in the United States, there is talk that you there in New Zealand are dealing with something very strange to us. It's called, and this is a technical term, groups of people. And apparently people, human beings, can safely get together in New Zealand, which we can't really do here. So what's the situation like again on these groups of people?
Yeah, it's been incredible, man. We're very grateful to be here at the moment, and that they've done such a good job of keeping, I guess, the pandemic out of here. But we can have, you know, huge sporting events and everything. We've been getting right into our rugby this year, and to see a packed stadium to watch a national sport is, you know, something that we're incredibly grateful and lucky for.
We'll come back to the pandemic and New Zealand in general later. You guys, even though, you know, there was, you know, some serious lockdowns last year, have been lucky enough to stay very, very busy through all this and turn the downtime to your advantage. So kind of walk me through Isolation 1 and 2 and what your days were like, what the writing was like, what the recording was like, and what the surrounding lifestyle was like while these things were getting done.
I think our isolation sessions are what happens when you take a band who's used to being busy and then you take them off the road. You know, after about a week of sort of being on vacation, we decided that you know, we missed playing, and we wanted to do something that connected with our fans around the world. You know, it's a time in the world when I think a lot of people are very isolated. And for us, it was just kind of a cool way for us to be playing music, playing songs we love, and to share that music with our fans. So it was kind of, you know, it was born out of the lockdown that we were in at the time. But it's been an awesome way to sort of reconnect with everyone.
Is there something maybe built into the psyche of each person from New Zealand with isolation? Because as beautiful a place as it is compared to folks here in North America and Europe, you're really out on the edge of civilization and the vastness of the Pacific. So, you know, are New Zealanders more apt to be able to deal with isolation than most other folks?
I mean, I think, you know, we live in basically two small islands, and wherever you are, you're not far from the ocean. And I think at some sides, the next stop on the ocean is South America, basically on the other side of the world. So you do grow up with that feeling of, you know, being, I guess, in your own little heaven, really. You know, when we first started, you know, playing together as a rock band, it was interesting wanting to be a professional musician in a country of 4 million people. You know, so we were very grateful to be able to tour the States and Europe and these places where you could kind of travel between countries in a few hours, or the US, just major city after major city. But it is, yeah, I mean, we've been lucky to come back here now and have it, you know, be so remote.
So let's get back to the recording of the albums, studios, personnel, and what were any sorts of restrictions that you had to deal with through the course of the last year?
Wow. I think basically whatever we had with us. Fortunately, we always take a recording rig on tour. And that's been something that we've always done. And thankfully we had it here because a lot of that music was recorded at a time when New Zealand was totally shut down. So there are great studios here, but we couldn't even really leave the house. So thankfully we had all that stuff with us. We've always loved recording our own music and producing our own stuff. And so that was kind of a gift. We're like, okay, we have time on our hands. We can't tour. We can't go into a big studio, but we can record this stuff here. So in a way, you know, it just kind of worked out for the best. And our approach has always been to try and make the most of things too. You know, we had this time that we could just jam on some songs and put them out for people. And so that's what we did.
Let's talk a little bit about the lyrical process and whether this stuff was actually written under all of the circumstances of the last year or not. But there seems to be a theme through quite a number of the songs of destruction and rebirth. Perhaps we begin with Empire of Ashes.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is obviously a very interesting time in the world to be putting that song out. It certainly speaks to destruction, and particularly the destructive power of the sort of megalomaniacs who often end up in charge, and kind of the paradox that people become so obsessed with power that they're willing to destroy the thing that they're trying to get hold of. And at the point that they actually inherit that position, there's nothing left. So Empire of Ashes sort of speaks to the idea that this sort of obsession with power that often results in, you know, destroying the very building blocks of our society.
I've asked this question of others before. You guys and I have discussed this sort of subject matter, but you have visited serious subjects before in your lyrical content. How do you keep the discussion factual and serious and yet still make it like a cool rock and roll song?
I mean, I think obviously with rock music, you're just writing what you feel. You know, we're not necessarily going to the library to study every word ever written on a subject before sort of starting the first verse. But I think it is a good thing in general for, you know, humans in our society to be well informed anyway, you know, to know what's going on in your own country and also around the world, you know. So I guess we just generally try and be, you know, aware of different things that are happening, and then certain things move you to write music.
If we could talk about another song, The Phoenix, which is a phenomenal track, I think another one that pretty much grabs the vibe of what's going on in the world these days.
Yeah, that one we basically started really in the first lockdown, almost immediately. You know, it's kind of crazy because we came to New Zealand as the first of 3 tours. So we were 3 months worth of touring that was taking us through New Zealand, then through Europe and the UK, and then back to the US for the festivals. And I think about 2 or 3 shows into the New Zealand tour, you know, the rest of the world just stopped, you know, New Zealand included. And we went straight into lockdown. And I mean, obviously, like everybody in the world, it was just such a huge shock, you know, and for us, you know, we love touring. I mean, it's one of the main reasons we're in a band is to play live every night, and just to everything you ever knew, just have it, you know, immediately stop. So I think that song was both for us and also for, you know, our fans, or obviously even people that don't listen to the music, just to let them know that we are all in this together, and that, you know, we're going through just an incredibly dark time right now. It's going to take a lot of struggle from all of us to get through it, but we will come out the other side, you know, and we will be stronger for it. So that was that one, yeah.
What is currently happening gig-wise in New Zealand? Recently, I saw a posting and it looked like a live music festival, and I thought, oh man, I really miss that a lot. I miss the smell of stale beer in clubs,
Yes.
like all these like little weirdo things. But currently, as of this moment, what is the situation for people going out and performing live music?
Well, I mean, I think you could really just open a beer in your house and just leave it there if you're missing the stale beer smell that bad.
It's not the same though. It's not the same.
That's true. It hasn't been lived in. Yeah, it's amazing here. You know, they can do live shows. The issue is, you know, it's like constant day-to-day seeing if COVID has made it through. A lot of Kiwis from around the world obviously are coming home and have been coming home since the pandemic started. So, you know, every day lots of planes are coming in and they're trying to move them into, you know, government quarantine. But still, occasionally things happen and it gets out. And so we thought a couple of times about, you know, booking shows and resuming a tour, and then you'd find out, oh, the country's going back into another lockdown, or hang on, we've just had a case come here, and it's a stressful way to do it. You know, try and book a tour knowing that any day, even the day before that, it could all be sort of yanked out from under you. So I think we just decided that the one thing we could guarantee to do to make the most of the time here was just work on new music, you know, and see our family, see our parents, see our granddad who's turning 98, who we haven't really seen a lot of for the last 10 years. And you know, making the best of last year has allowed us to spend time with them.
One last live music thing. I'd be curious, what, if any, sort of, you know, horror stories you heard from any other music artists, you know. You guys are obviously friends with a ton of people. You were out, you said, in Australia when things started to lock down, so you were close to home. Some folks had a hell of a time. Starset comes to mind. They were up in Siberia and almost got trapped in the Moscow airport trying to get home before everything was shut down. Were there anything you heard from any other artists who were really kind of not quite as lucky as you?
I don't know, but it's interesting. I mean, initially, the way our tours were scheduled, we would have been in Europe when the tour got cancelled. We ended up being in New Zealand because the tours had switched, you know, months and months out. But, you know, we would have been in the middle of, you know, Eastern Europe, and we would have had all of our crew there, and they would have been trying to get back to the States, and we would have been trying to get back here. It's funny, we had our sound engineer, our front of house engineer in New Zealand. He's from America. So as the tour got, you know, postponed here, then all of a sudden he's trying to check in with his wife and kids to see how they're doing. And then I think, you know, we were monitoring the situation in the world, and he might have booked a flight, and an hour later, luckily it's just one plane between here and there. But when we were initially trying to think, how do we make these tours happen? How do we get back? You know, it was interesting. Ken, our brother, has had a really interesting time too, because he lives in Canada, and he was here, you know, on tour with us, obviously. And he hasn't been able to get back to Canada because the Canada-US border has been shut, and aren't enough, you know, nobody's flying direct to Canada. So he was on a waiting list, I think, for 6 weeks, and that rolled over to another 6 weeks, and that rolled over to another 6 weeks. So he spent, you know, the majority of last year kind of and sort of in the middle between staying and leaving. But I think now he's seeing it out here now that it's summer, right? So, yeah, I don't know. A lot of people, obviously, you know, I think we kind of saw it coming. That being said, obviously, it took us completely by surprise how bad it got. But it was something that I think we were following since the very beginning of the year, thinking like, oh, that's interesting. We're playing in this city on our next tour, and that city's in lockdown. That's going to be interesting.
Hell of a way to make a living, isn't it?
Well, it's an amazing way to make a living. But it's interesting when you take a touring band, a band that tours for a living, and then you say, oh, well, no more touring for the next year and a half or however long, it will have been when we come out of this.
I remember when the lockdowns first started here, and the big thing was, no public gatherings that aren't strictly necessary. That was one of the first things. And we're like, dude, our job is unnecessary public gathering. Right? Like, we go from country to country, sometimes a different country every single day, getting groups of people together. So as we, the scale of it, I don't know that any of us predicted, but certainly as you saw the dominoes start to fall, we were like, okay, this is actually what we do, traveling around, meeting people. So this might impact us for a while.
It's like you got to tell the guys at Customs, it's like, people don't need us, but they really need us,
Exactly. We told them that Lou needs that stale beer smell. The only way for it to get it is through Like a Storm, so that didn't work.
Here's just a general non-pandemic travel question for you guys. It's always a pain in the ass for bands to travel and haul equipment and, like you said, go across borders sometimes every day. You guys are, of course, well known for introducing the Didgeridoo into heavy music, which give some background on it. I know it. I believe at least it came up with the Aboriginal people of Northern Australia, 1 to 2,000 years ago. How did you guys end up working it into the band, though?
Well, one of our sets of grandparents lived in Australia. So every year from the time I was a little kid, I'd go over there and visit them. And I think it's just one of those things when you go to Australia, you're exposed to the didgeridoo. People might be busking on the main streets or, playing at kind of outside the airport or whatever. And the first time I heard that instrument, I was just totally blown away. It's like nothing else, you've ever heard. And so I was kind of always just fascinated with it. It's just so like otherworldly, for lack of a better phrase, And when I got a bit older, we went on a trip there, I got one. And it was just kind of something totally different to Like a Storm. It was just something I wanted to learn to play because it seemed so impossible. And then I guess once I kind of figured out how to play it, I think we just started thinking like, oh, well, why don't we just incorporate it into the intro of a show? Like when you're starting out and you're kind of playing in bars with that stale beer smell that you love so much.
I do.
You start playing and people are just talking through it or whatever. And we figured pretty quickly that if I started with the didgeridoo, then everybody in the venue just shut up and was transfixed on the stage. So from that point, we were like, hey, why don't we try and bring it into our music to see if it actually works with like heavy rock music. And the first song we really did that was Love the Way You Hate Me. And it was just incredible hearing it back with the drums that we'd had recorded in the didgeridoo over the top. We were just thinking, I can't believe no one's ever done this before. It's the two instruments just complement each other so well. And it is such a heavy instrument for something that is thousands of years old.
I want to bring it back to the original point about traveling with it.
Yes.
Have you ever run into troubles having to explain to Customs just what it is? Like anybody pull it out at like an airport and go, what the fuck?
Probably. I remember in the, the early days. So when I first started, I was using wooden didgeridoos, and every time we'd go through those in Customs, it would be an issue because you're bringing in a wooden product. I don't know. I can't, New Zealand, especially because it's an island, they're very careful about anything that they're bringing in that could have whatever insects in it. And
it's like it becomes an agricultural product at that point, which they're more scared of than most anything else.
Right, exactly. So I would have to have this conversation every single time. And then I noticed that when I went to play the didgeridoo, it was half destroyed because, you know, thousands of years ago when they invented it, they weren't thinking about international flights. You know, so it turns out it's not that well suited to life on the road. So I now have PVC didges, you know, that are really a part of the stage set now. So not only are we traveling with didgeridoos and, you know, at least 8, you know, didgeridoos, but also the skeletons to go with the holders. So it's always, you know, pretty crazy seeing people, if they ever go through it.
Well, I should point. Oh, what's going through there now?
Oh, we had the park behind my parents' house. They had decided today was a good day to mow the lawns, so we have an industrial mower.
See, everything where I am is covered in ice. I'd love to hear a lawnmower at this point. I'd be like, rock outside. I'll do the show with it on. It's okay.
You're welcome, dude. It took us a lot to line that up, so you're very welcome.
The smell of fresh mowed grass is one of the great things on this earth, other than the smell of stale beer.
Right?
Yes.
You're a man who loves his scents, aren't you, Lou?
Indeed, I do. Now, I should point out that didgeridoos, at least here in the United States, are very rare. Branded like a storm didgeridoos are even rarer, but the rarest of them all would be the autographed
Oh, hell yeah.
like a storm didgeridoo. I don't know if you guys remember giving this to me years ago. I still have it. I keep it right here in my my home studio. It's been here since you gave it to me. And it's just one of those things that people always pick up and go, what the hell is that? And of course they ask me to play it and I'm like, I don't know. I've tried to get sound out of it, but it just doesn't work.
You've had it for a few years now, so you must be pretty good at it.
Yeah, I'm about as good a, you know, I like if you could learn how to play instruments through osmosis or through just contact, I'd be the greatest guitar player in the world because I've essentially spoke to every guitar player on this planet over the course of the last 30 years. But it just doesn't work that way for guitars or didgeridoos.
No, there is a little more involved than that, but I think between the osmosis and the stale beer, I think you got it covered.
Now, if we could, let me quiz you guys about New Zealand in general. I've never traveled there. I've wanted to go my entire life. I think people at this point are most familiar with it through the Lord of the Rings and the Hobbit films, which are
factually accurate. That is exactly what New Zealand's like.
Well, you know what? I remember the second time seeing Fellowship of the Ring, and I brought one of my sisters to it. And about halfway through, she leans over, and it's a shot of the misty mountains, and it's gorgeous and pristine. And she whispers in my ear, "This looks like a 3-hour commercial for the fucking New Zealand Transit Board." You know,
yes.
So tourism board, I should say. But
right. Yeah.
You know, how do people in New Zealand feel about how New Zealand is seen by the rest of the world through films and television and things like that?
Well, I mean, we can kind of speak firsthand into how New Zealand is perceived and how New Zealanders are treated because we've traveled the world as New Zealanders, you know, and I think it really makes you appreciate what you grew up with. I think if you grow up in a place like this, you just think that that's normal, you know? Then you start traveling and you realize, of course, if you see the Lord of the Rings movies, you realize what a beautiful place it is. But also New Zealand is kind of a place that prides itself on people being down to earth and genuine. And we've certainly seen the benefits of that, you know, traveling the world as New Zealanders. It's like people are so awesome to us straight away as soon as they find out that you come from New Zealand. So whatever's going on between the Peter Jackson movies and just the exporting of New Zealanders all around the world, we've certainly enjoyed the benefits of that.
And at nighttime, are the orcs, they're never a problem or a danger or anything?
Well, they're big stars now, dude. You know, they used to be a problem.
Nowadays, they're just on the red carpet, partying it up all night. So it's actually become much safer as a result of the Lord of the Rings success. Yeah.
One other thing about your homeland, and the thing I really want to travel down there the most for is the night skies. There is once you get outside the cities like Christchurch, the night skies and the view of the stars are incredible. And also I should point out that you could argue that the Southern Hemisphere night skies with the different constellations and stars and the Southern Cross and the Magellanic Clouds are a lot more beautiful than up here, and you see a lot more of the Milky Way. Put in your own words, when you get out of the cities in New Zealand and you look up on a clear night, what does it look like?
We actually just came back from Lake Taupo, which is so the mountains that are Mordor in the rings, that is in Lake Taupo, the Central Plateau, which is in the middle of the North Island. And we actually just came back from there. And that is one of those places where you're out of the city and you look up at the stars, and it's unbelievable. I mean, one of the things I think I never thought about growing up here is that our night sky is different to yours. And that's what you're used to. So you go and travel the world, and then you come home, and when you look up at the stars, it sounds cheesy, but you can't help but get that sense of nostalgia or that sense of being home, because you're seeing different constellations, and it reminds you of, being a kid going camping or just going out at night or whatever. But certainly, I mean, it's a beautiful place here. And, because New Zealand's not super densely populated, you don't have to go very far out of any city to get this incredible view.
Well, I can't wait to see it. The closest I came was a couple of years ago. I was right in the middle of booking a trip. I was coming down there to see Slipknot and Metallica. They were playing Halloween in Auckland, and I had the itinerary. I had it all set to go, and had my hookups for it. And of course, James needed to go back to rehab, and they scotched the whole thing. But man, I was ready to call you guys. I'm like, I need a couch.
Right? You still could have come.
I need a didgeridoo lesson.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? As soon as things are clear to travel and you guys are letting us back into New Zealand, I can't wait. But I appreciate the time. And if you don't mind me asking, through all of this, everybody on your end has been okay and has stayed healthy and is all right?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lou. Yeah, everybody is, both Zach, of course, is our drummer's in Los Angeles. He's been here through that. He's been through that the whole time. So luckily, he's managed to stay healthy. His family has, and we all have here. Thank you. So yeah, very, very, very blessed and grateful for that.
Well, Matt and Chris from Like a Storm, appreciate the time. I'll look forward to getting down there to New Zealand, and I'm going to bring somebody with me. Do you know who I'm bringing with me?
The didgeridoo?
No, I'm going to bring my precious.
Oh, yes.
All right.
Sick reference.
One ring to rule them all. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, man. I just want to say before we go that our thoughts go out to, everyone around the rest of the world who's dealing with the pandemic right now. And we're thinking of you guys, and we love you guys, and we'll see you all soon.
Wonderful words. We'll see you soon, too.
Awesome. Thank you, Lou.